On a cold, quiet night, a young man in a red hoodie rides his bike down an empty street. He's rushing home to care for his mother, who is paralyzed and confined to bed. As he pedals along, he spots an elderly woman sitting alone in a wheelchair on the side of the road, looking vulnerable and helpless. Without a second thought, he stops and approaches her, offering a hand of kindness. Kneeling down, he helps her back into her wheelchair and with a smile pushes her down the street. As the woman smiles with relief, the young man thinks of his mother, knowing that every small act of kindness can make a world of difference. On a cold, quiet evening, Darius, a college student burdened with his mother's care and a tiring delivery job, was pushing his bike up the slope near his neighborhood. The air was biting and his muscles ached from the day's work, but his thoughts were with his mother, Monica, who was waiting for him at home. Monica had been paralyzed for years after a car accident. Darius had taken on the responsibility of caring for her since he was young. Between college and work, there was no time for rest, yet he pushed through. His heart ached for her every day, but he didn't let it show. His bike's tires squeaked as he pedaled up the hill. He'd almost reached home when something caught his eye. A wheelchair, an old one, sitting in the middle of the road. The figure behind it, a frail elderly woman, was struggling, trying to fix the chair's malfunctioning controls. Despite his exhaustion, Darius couldn't just pass by. He stopped, his feet on the ground before his brain could process the decision. "You okay?" His voice was hoarse from the cold. The woman looked up at him and he could see the relief flood her face. "Oh, thank God. I've been stuck for over 10 minutes, she said. Darius knelt down to examine the wheelchair. He had worked on bikes and other machines before. This wasn't much different. The motor was dead, but the control panel lights were still on. "I think I can fix it," Darius said, pulling out his phone to use the flashlight. The woman gave a grateful nod. As he worked quickly, the wind stung his face, but he was used to it. He found the loose connection and secured it. When he finished, he stood and gestured for her to try again. She pressed the controls and the chair hummed back to life. "Oh my word. You really fixed it," the woman exclaimed, beaming with gratitude. But as she prepared to move, Darius noticed the steep hill ahead. The chair wasn't made for that kind of incline. "I'll push you up the hill," he offered. "No, you don't have to," she protested. But Darius wasn't taking no for an answer. "I'm offering, not asking," he replied firmly, taking his place behind the wheelchair and gripping the cold metal handles. It wasn't an easy journey. His legs burned with each step, but he didn't stop. As they slowly made their way up, the woman, whose name he learned was Evelyn, chatted with him. Her warmth and kindness made the task feel less burdensome. When they finally reached her house, Evelyn insisted on offering him money for his troubles. But Darius refused. "I didn't help you for that," he said, already backing away toward his bike. "Just wanted to make sure you were okay." As Darius rode off into the night, he couldn't shake the feeling that something about this night, this encounter, had shifted something inside him. Little did he know, this act of kindness was about to change his life forever. Stay tuned for the next part. Darius's world is about to collide with an opportunity that he never imagined possible. What's next for him? The next morning, Darius awoke with the usual pounding headache from the lack of sleep. The clock read 5:30 a.m. and his legs felt like lead from last night's exertion. Still, there was no time to waste. He shuffled into the kitchen, the familiar scent of cold coffee and old bread filling the air. His mother, Monica, was still in bed, her face pale and weary from the constant pain. Despite all the hardships, she always greeted him with a smile. He started the coffee machine, pulling out a few leftovers from the fridge to make breakfast. There was little food, but it was enough. He made 2 cups of coffee, one for him, one for his mom. She was always awake before him, waiting for her daily cup. "Morning, Mom," he said softly, handing her the mug. Her tired smile was his daily reminder of why he worked so hard. "Morning, baby," she replied, her voice rough. "You sleep okay?" "Like a rock," Darius lied, brushing off the exhaustion. They both knew it wasn't true. Darius helped Monica transfer into her wheelchair, a process that had become second nature to him over the years. They'd been through this routine so many times that it felt like muscle memory. "You don't have to do all this," Monica said, a hint of concern in her voice. "You're 20, Darius. You should be out having fun, enjoying life." Darius knelt beside her chair, locking eyes with her. "You're not a burden, Mom. You never have been. Everything I do for you. You taught me how to keep going when life knocks you down. She squeezed his hand, her eyes welling up with pride and sadness. How did I get so lucky? She whispered. He smiled, rubbing her hand gently. Pretty sure I'm the lucky one. With his backpack slung over his shoulder, he headed out the door to attend class. It wasn't easy, but it was the life he had, and he wasn't going to let anything break him. Later that evening, after a long day of classes and work, Darius came home to a surprise, an email. It was from Whitmore Mobility, the company that made the high-end wheelchairs that Monica couldn't afford. Curious about how this could change everything for Darius? The opportunity awaiting him could be the key to unlocking his future. What's next? Darius stared at the email in disbelief. It was an official message from Whitmore Mobility, the company that had built the wheelchair his mother desperately needed. The subject line caught his attention: Whitmore Mobility Internship Opportunity. His first instinct was to delete it. Spam. It had to be. No one, especially a company like that, would send someone like him an internship offer out of the blue. But something made him hesitate. Curiosity gnawed at him, urging him to read further. He clicked open the email, and his heart skipped a beat as his eyes scanned the message. Dear Darius McKinley, Whitmore Mobility is pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a candidate for our engineering internship program. This internship includes a full scholarship for the remainder of your degree, paid position for 20 hours per week with a flexible schedule, and a starting salary of $40,000 annually, prorated for part-time work. Darius blinked, reading the email again, trying to make sense of it. This couldn't be real. A scholarship, a paid internship, this had to be a mistake. But it wasn't. The email had official branding and a contact number that seemed legitimate. He turned around to find his mother in the living room, watching TV. He could hardly process the words in front of him, his mind spinning in confusion and disbelief. Mom, he called, his voice shaky. I think I just got the weirdest email of my life. Monica turned to him, squinting at the phone he held out. She took it from his hands, her eyes scanning the message. Her face lit up as she read. Darius, she whispered, her voice full of amazement. This is real. This is real. Whitmore Mobility. They make the chairs we couldn't afford. Her voice cracked slightly as she turned to him. How did you get this? Darius shook his head, still in disbelief. I don't know. Maybe it's a mistake. It has to be. No, she said, her hands trembling slightly as she handed the phone back to him. This isn't a mistake. You have to respond to this. You have to say yes. He looked at her, unsure of what to do. This was a huge opportunity, but a part of him felt like it was too good to be true. I don't know, Mom, he said, his voice distant. This just seems too big. Don't let fear hold you back, Monica replied, a proud tear slipping down her cheek. You've worked so hard. You deserve this. Darius swallowed hard. His heart raced, but he knew deep down that his mom was right. This could be his big break. He took a deep breath and typed his response. Could this internship really change everything for Darius? Find out how this unexpected opportunity leads to life-altering choices and personal growth in the next part. On Monday morning, Darius was a bundle of nerves. He had never felt so out of place in his life. The suit he had borrowed from his mother's closet felt too tight, and his shoes, which he had scrubbed clean the night before, still didn't look quite right. He stood outside the Whitmore Mobility Tower, a massive, sleek glass building towering above him. The sound of traffic rushed by, but Darius didn't hear it. His mind was racing, wondering if he was truly ready for this moment. He'd spent his life living paycheck to paycheck, caring for his mother. Now, here he was, standing in front of one of the most prestigious mobility companies in the country, about to interview for an internship that could change his life forever. The lobby was pristine, filled with marble floors and modern artwork that felt like something out of a dream. He walked hesitantly toward the reception desk, his heart thumping in his chest. The receptionist, a woman in business attire, smiled politely.
Can I help you?
She asked. Yes, Darius said, his voice shaky. I'm here for an interview. Darius McKinley, for the engineering internship. She checked her computer screen and nodded. You're all set. Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly. Darius sat down in one of the plush leather chairs. He tried to steady his breathing, but the nerves didn't let up. He felt like an imposter, sitting in a space that felt so far removed from the reality he knew. Everyone around him seemed confident, walking with purpose. He, on the other hand, felt like he was just trying to stay afloat. Then he heard a voice from behind him. "Mr. McKinley?" He turned around to see a man in a gray suit walking toward him. He extended his hand and Darius shook it, trying to maintain his composure. "James," the man said. "I'm Miss Whitmore's assistant. If you'll follow me, she's expecting you." Darius followed James through a long hallway, past walls filled with photos of wheelchair prototypes and news articles about accessibility laws. It wasn't until they reached a large office at the end of the hall that Darius's heart nearly stopped. There, sitting behind a massive mahogany desk, was Evelyn Whitmore. The same woman he had helped on the hill just days ago. Her presence was commanding, and the room felt larger the moment she looked up at him. "Hello, Darius," she said with a smile, her voice warm but professional. "It's nice to finally meet you properly." Darius froze. You're Evelyn Whitmore?" She chuckled lightly. "Yes. I suppose I didn't introduce myself that night. Please take a seat." Darius sat across from her, still in shock. "I didn't think this was real," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It is real," she replied, her eyes softening. "And I'd like to know more about you. Why don't you start by telling me why you helped me that night?" Darius took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. "I didn't really think about it at the time," he began, his voice gaining strength. "I just saw someone who needed help, and I could do it. So I did." Evelyn nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "That's exactly what I thought. And I think that's exactly why you're here today. What happens when Darius's act of kindness leads to a life-changing opportunity? Find out how he navigates his interview and whether he's offered a chance to prove himself in the next part." The interview was over before Darius knew it. It had all happened so quickly. Evelyn's genuine questions, her calm demeanor, and her warmth. She'd asked him about his family, his work ethic, and his dreams. But the question that stood out the most was the one that left Darius pondering for hours afterward. "Why did you help me?" Darius had answered honestly, without hesitation. "Because you needed help and I could do it." He hadn't been looking for a reward or recognition, just the right thing to do in a moment of need. Evelyn had seemed genuinely impressed by his response. In fact, she looked at him with a softness that made him feel like he belonged here, despite his doubts. As the meeting came to a close, Evelyn handed him a letter of offer. His hands shook as he took it, his heart thudding in his chest. "Darius," she said, "you're the kind of person we need here. I want to offer you the internship with a full scholarship for the remainder of your degree. This internship will include a paid position, 20 hours a week with flexible hours, and a starting salary of $40,000 per year, prorated for part-time. We believe in your potential and want to support you in your career. Will you accept?" Darius stared at her, stunned. The words felt like they were coming from another world, one where people like him didn't usually get these opportunities. He had barely managed to stay afloat in life, taking care of his mother while juggling school and work. This offer seemed too big, too overwhelming. But then he thought about his mom, the struggles she faced every day, and the hope that this opportunity could change their lives. I don't know what to say," Darius managed to mutter, still processing. Evelyn smiled kindly. "Say yes," she urged. "Take the opportunity. You've earned it." In that moment, all Darius could think about was how this could be the chance to make a difference, not just for him, but for his mom, too. He swallowed his nerves, and with a deep breath, he nodded. Yes, I'll accept." Evelyn's smile widened, and she stood to shake his hand. "Welcome to Whitmore Mobility, Darius. You've just stepped into a new chapter. We're happy to have you on board." Darius left the office in a daze. He stepped into the elevator, his mind still spinning. He couldn't believe it. His life had just taken a turn he hadn't expected. This wasn't just an internship. It was an opportunity to change everything. But even as he walked out of the building, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. The pressure to perform, to prove that he deserved this chance, was overwhelming. When he got home, he found his mother sitting on the couch, waiting for him. He could see the concern in her eyes as he walked through the door. "How was it, baby?" she asked, her voice tentative. Darius stood in the doorway for a moment, taking in the sight of her. She was still recovering, her arm in a cast, but she was always so strong, so resilient. He had to be strong for her, too. "I got the internship," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And the scholarship." "It's real, Mom, it's all real. Monica's face lit up and she gasped. "Oh, Darius, this is it."
This is the breakthrough we've been waiting for.
He smiled, but it was a tired, uncertain smile. "It's a lot of pressure, Mom. I don't want to mess this up." "You won't," she said softly, reaching for his hand. "You've always done what's best. You've made it this far and you'll keep going. This is your time." Darius squeezed her hand, the weight of the future hanging in the air between them. But in that moment he knew he had to embrace it, because this was more than just a job. It was a chance to finally build the life they both deserved. With a new opportunity on the horizon, how will Darius rise to the challenge? Find out how his first day on the job goes and how he proves himself in the next part of this incredible journey. The first day of his internship at Whitmore Mobility was everything Darius had expected and nothing like he had imagined. He woke up early, far too early, his nerves already running high. He didn't want to mess this up, not after everything he had worked for. His mother had insisted he wear his best clothes, which in his case meant a slightly wrinkled white shirt and a pair of black pants that were a little too tight. Still, it was the best he had. The office was a far cry from his small, cramped apartment. It was sleek, modern, and full of people who seemed to belong. As he walked in, he was greeted by a receptionist who handed him a visitor badge and directed him to the engineering department on the 23rd floor. He rode the elevator up, feeling like he was stepping into a different world, a world where people like him weren't meant to be. The doors opened to a bright open space filled with drafting tables, computer stations, and prototypes of wheelchairs. People worked at their desks, typing away or discussing ideas with one another. It felt intimidating, to say the least. Darius found himself standing at the edge of the room, unsure of where to go next. Just as he was about to turn around, a man in a gray polo shirt walked up to him. "You must be Darius," the man said with a firm handshake. "I'm Marcus. I'll be your mentor here." Nice to meet you, sir," Darius stammered. He still felt out of place, as if he didn't belong here. Marcus led him to a workstation and explained the projects they were currently working on. Darius nodded along, but his mind kept wandering. He had no experience in this field, no background in engineering. The only thing he had was his determination and his desire to make a difference. After showing him the ropes, Marcus introduced him to the team. There was Rob, the quiet fabricator, Stephen, the seasoned designer, Jessica, the project manager, and Ava, the mentor who had been assigned to guide him through the internship. Ava greeted him warmly, giving him a smile that made him feel a little less like an outsider. "Don't worry," she said. "You'll fit in here in no time. Just keep your head down, work hard, and ask questions when you need to." But even with her encouragement, Darius couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong. He spent the day observing, taking notes, and trying to keep up with the flow of the team. The work was fast-paced, and he struggled to keep up. At one point, he felt like he was drowning in the technical jargon being thrown around the room. But something kept him going. He thought about his mom, about how hard she fought every day. She hadn't had the luxury of quitting when things got tough, and neither could he. By the end of the day, despite his exhaustion, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this could work. Maybe he could find his place here. Will Darius be able to prove himself in the high-pressure world of engineering? Find out what happens in his second week at Whitmore Mobility, where challenges and surprises await. As Darius settled into his second week at Whitmore Mobility, the initial excitement began to wear off and reality set in. It was harder than he had imagined. The team moved at a pace that made his head spin. They were all experts in their fields, working with cutting-edge technology that he didn't fully understand yet. But what bothered him most was how out of place he felt. During lunch breaks, the team would gather in the cafeteria, chatting about their latest projects, discussing the latest tech trends. Darius, on the other hand, would sit alone eating his packed sandwich, silently wishing he could be a part of their conversations. His lack of experience in the field made him feel like an outsider, an imposter in a world where everyone else seemed to belong. But then there was Ava. She was the only one who didn't treat him like the intern. She made him feel like he was part of the team, patiently guiding him through the technical aspects of their work. She even made sure he understood the basics of SolidWorks, the CAD software they used for designing prototypes. One day, as Darius was struggling to make sense of the 3D models on his screen, Ava stopped by his desk. "You okay?" she asked, a friendly smile on her face. I'm trying to figure this out, but I feel like I'm just staring at a bunch of lines, he admitted, frustration creeping into his voice. I don't know how to make this work. Ava leaned over his shoulder and pointed at the screen. Okay, let's break this down together, she said. You've got the basic idea, but you need to think about the problem from a user perspective. Imagine you're designing a product for someone like your mom. Darius blinked, surprised by her approach. It was simple, but it made sense. He had been so caught up in trying to get the technicalities right that he had lost sight of the bigger picture. Ava's advice reminded him of why he had come to Whitmore. Mobility in the first place, to design products that truly helped people. What would make this easier for the person using it? She asked. That question clicked something inside him. He looked at the screen again, this time thinking about the user experience, and suddenly everything started to fall into place. By the end of the week, Darius had successfully completed his first design, a simple modification to improve the armrest on one of their wheelchair models. The change was small, but it made a big difference in comfort for users with limited upper body strength. He felt a sense of pride when he saw the positive feedback from the team, even from Tom, who had been cold toward him since the first day. Despite the progress, doubts lingered. Was he really cut out for this? The workload was relentless, and the challenges seemed to grow every day. But as he sat at his desk late one night staring at his mom's old wheelchair, now sitting in the corner of the office for reference, Darius made a promise to himself. He wasn't going to quit. Not now. Not when he had come so far. The next morning he received an email from Marcus, the team leader. Darius, I need you to help out with a new project. We're working on a wheelchair for developing countries, low cost, durable, and easy to repair. Can you meet with the team at 9 a.m.? He was hesitant at first. Could he really contribute to something this big? But he reminded himself of what Ava had told him. Design with empathy. He didn't have to be perfect, but he had to care. That was enough. How will Darius handle his biggest project yet? Can he rise to the challenge and make a difference with his designs? Find out how he navigates this new opportunity in the next part. Part 8. The developing project. Darius was already feeling the pressure when he walked into the meeting for the new project. Designing a wheelchair for developing countries was no small task. The goal was to create something affordable, durable, and easy to repair. 3 qualities that most high-end mobility devices lacked. The team was excited, but the stakes were high, and the timeline was short. Marcus gave a brief overview of the project, explaining the challenge they faced. They needed to keep the price under $300 per unit while ensuring that it could withstand the harsh conditions often found in rural areas. This isn't just about building another wheelchair, Marcus said. It's about providing mobility and independence to people who need it the most. Darius was already brainstorming ideas, trying to think of ways to innovate without sacrificing quality. The other team members were discussing materials, costs, and testing procedures, but Darius kept thinking about his mom, about how much she had struggled with her old wheelchair. He knew the challenges these people faced. He had lived them. When the conversation shifted to the wheelchair's weight, Darius raised his hand. What about the wheels? He asked. Most wheelchairs struggle on uneven terrain, and when you're dealing with rural roads, you need something that can withstand the wear and tear. What if we used a different material for the wheels? Something lighter but more durable? The room fell silent as everyone processed his suggestion. It's worth exploring, Marcus said, nodding approvingly. Let's test this idea. As the meeting progressed, Darius continued to contribute, focusing on aspects that he felt were important for the users: comfort, durability, and accessibility. He found himself growing more confident in his role, and his team began to take notice. Even Tom, who had been distant, started to ask for his input during meetings. By the end of the week, Darius had helped come up with several new ideas for the project, including a modular design that would allow the wheelchair to be easily repaired with local materials. The team was impressed with his innovative thinking, and it felt like they were finally starting to gel as a group. But just as things seemed to be going well, Darius received some unexpected news that shook him to his core. His mother had taken a fall at home, and the injury was more serious than they had initially thought. She was going to need surgery. How will Darius handle this new setback? Will he be able to balance his responsibilities at work and his family? Find out what happens when his world is turned upside down in the next part. Darius felt his world shift when the call came from his mother. She had fallen again. This time, the injury was worse than he could have ever imagined. His mind raced as he heard his mother's shaky voice on the other end of the line. "Darius, I think I broke my arm." The words hit him like a cold wave. He had been so focused on his work at Whitmore Mobility, on the designs on the new wheelchair project, that he had barely noticed how much stress his mom was under. Her condition was worsening, and now he was forced to face it head-on. It wasn't just the broken arm. She had severe pain in her shoulder, and the doctor suspected that she may have hit her head during the fall. The hospital confirmed the worst of his fears. Surgery was necessary. His mom was in pain, exhausted and scared, and Darius felt the weight of responsibility crash down on him. He rushed to the hospital, the familiar sterile smell of the emergency room greeting him as he rushed past the nurses and doctors. His heart pounded, his hands trembling with anxiety. When he saw his mother lying there, vulnerable and pale, all the exhaustion he had been holding back came rushing forward. He couldn't do this alone, but he knew he couldn't let his work at Whitmore Mobility suffer either. The internship was his lifeline, the one thing that had the potential to change everything for both him and his mother. He couldn't afford to lose it, not now when things were finally starting to turn around. As he sat in the waiting room that night, his phone buzzed. The email from Evelyn Whitmore was waiting for him. He almost didn't want to read it, but curiosity won out. The subject line read, "Whitmore Mobility, your position." He opened it, his eyes scanning the text quickly. "We are sorry to hear about your mother's condition. Take all the time you need to focus on her recovery. Your internship position is secure, and we will make adjustments to your schedule." The weight lifted slightly from his chest. At least his job wasn't at risk. But the relief was short-lived as reality set back in. How was he going to balance everything? He couldn't keep up the grueling pace he had been living, working late into the night, handling school and caring for his mom. He had to make a choice, and his mother's well-being had to come first. The hospital stay was long. Every day he sat by her side, helping her with small tasks, adjusting her position in the bed, feeding her when she couldn't do it herself. The nights were the hardest, sitting in the small chair beside her, making sure she was comfortable enough to sleep. His mind drifted to the wheelchair designs, to the project he had been so passionate about. It was difficult to focus on work when all he could think about was making sure his mom was okay. Days turned into weeks, and Darius knew he needed to make a decision about his future at Whitmore Mobility. He couldn't keep living this way, half in his personal life, half in his work life. The constant stress was too much. But what was the right choice? How will Darius manage his job and his personal life? Will he sacrifice his dream to care for his mother? Or is there a way to balance both? Find out what happens in the next part as he navigates this difficult decision. Darius walked into his apartment that evening, the weight of the day heavy on his shoulders. His mother was recovering slowly, and he had made arrangements for extra help during the day. But the burden still felt like too much to carry. He hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night in weeks, and his body was starting to betray him. He hadn't responded to Marcus's email yet, the one about adjusting his hours. He wasn't sure what to say. Could he keep up the pace at Whitmore Mobility while also taking care of his mother? Or should he step back from his internship, focus entirely on her and leave the opportunity behind? That evening he sat down at the kitchen table, his mind racing. He stared at his phone. The screen lit up with messages from Ava, checking in to see how he was doing. But he couldn't focus on that right now. His mom was sleeping in her room and the apartment was eerily quiet. For the first time in weeks, Darius allowed himself a moment to breathe. He thought about everything he had worked for. The hours spent learning CAD, the late nights designing accessibility features, the breakthrough moment when Marcus had recognized his talent. But he also thought about his mother's face, her eyes always filled with pride and concern for him. There was no right answer, no perfect way to balance the demands of family and work. But Darius had learned something over the past few months. He couldn't let fear stop him. He had already proven to himself that he was capable, that his ideas could make a difference. Darius took a deep breath and typed a response to Marcus. He decided to be honest, explaining his situation and asking for some flexibility in his schedule. He wasn't going to walk away from his dream, not when he had come so far. But he needed to prioritize his mom's health while still pursuing his passion for engineering and accessibility. Marcus's reply came within the hour. Darius, I completely understand. We're a team here and we'll work with you. Let's find a way to make this work. You're a valuable part of this company, and we want to see you succeed both personally and professionally. Darius's heart lifted. Maybe, just maybe, he could have it all. It wasn't going to be easy, but he could find a way to balance it. He wasn't alone. Can Darius continue his work at Whitmore Mobility and care for his mother? Find out how he steps into this new chapter of his life and career in the next part.